One way to add some motion to your chord progressions is to use chord inversions. Listen to these examples and see if you can pick out where those chord inversions are happening to add some motion into the overall chord progression. So in all those chord progressions that I was playing there, I was using a very simple technique to add some motion to the chord progressions. And that is taking the 1 chord in first inversion to move up to the 4 chord. Now what does this look like? And first of all, what is an inversion? Well, let's look at G, the first example. Here's G, B, and D, which make up that chord. It's a basic triad, so it's made up the root, the 3rd, and the 5th. Now, when I play this position, this chord shape, I'm playing the bass note of G. But what if I wanted to put the 3rd, B, in the bass? Now I'm playing a chord inversion because I no longer have the root in the bass. I now have the 3rd. If I played a D, I have another inversion. And all I'm doing is I'm just walking up from the root to the 3rd to the 5th. And playing the chord shape with that. So first inversion, all that means is putting the 3rd into the bass note instead of the root. So what's nice about this is you can actually hear the voice leading. We have the root going to the 3rd to the 4 chord. The root of the 4 chord, C. So G, B, and C. So let's try this chord progression both ways. We'll just play a normal G to that C add 9. And there's nothing wrong with that. We've heard lots of songs like that. Well, now let me add that chord inversion to add some motion here. You can hear how it really leads to that C chord. And you don't have to do it necessarily in those same beats. You can actually just add it to the end. There I'm doing it a little bit later. But because you have that bass motion, it really just adds some motion to the chord progression. In the second example, I was just using the key of A. And so let's look at the notes that make A. We have A, C sharp, and E. So I'm playing root position here of that chord. Well, what if I want to play that in first inversion? What would be the root note? Well, it would be C sharp. And I'm going to grab it here. And again, you can see how that leads nicely to the D chord. This is the D chord in the C form that you might be familiar with. Instead of playing it up here, you can play it there too. Or whatever you're comfortable with. And for that, I was doing more of a rock palm muting. And I was using it also to lead down back to the A. Well, that was a little sloppy at the end. But you can hear that motion again. In the final example, I basically was using the same technique, but I was breaking it up a little bit. I was putting a chord in between before I got to the inversion that led to the 4 chord. And it went something like this. So let's look at those chords here. I'm doing C to D minor, to C in first inversion, to the 4 chord again. And what would be C in first inversion? Well, the C triad is made up of C, E, and G. So E, and I'm grabbing it here, and I'm using the top half of my C chord to get to that F. So again, it was C, D minor, C, D minor, and then that first inversion to the F, to the 4 chord. So experiment with this a little bit. Next time you have a chord progression, and it's a very common one that you have kind of the 4 chord in it, or you're leading from the 1 chord to the 4 chord, try throwing in the first inversion of the 1 chord to voice lead you in the bass motion to the 4 chord.